appointment, we're looking to qualify the buyer. Is this someone we even want to work with? In the discovery call, we're looking to discover their situation, their pain. Do they have a reason to move forward? Do you have a reason to want to spend more time with them? And if there's enough of a possibility that you could develop it up into a relationship, then we need to do a very thorough cybersecurity risk assessment so we know exactly what's going on in that business so that we can show them what they really need. And it's this idea of showing them what they really need where the game starts to change from the way you may have played it in the past. Because the question becomes this: how do you show them what they really need if you offer choices? Okay.
Now, one thing I will say on that, Cindy, is I get a
Yeah.
lot of kickback from the MSP community that's not in our membership group, where they come back and they said, well, they're very used to, side note, they're very used to the client objecting based on price exclusively and almost immediately. So what does the MSP in their brain start to do? They start to pull pieces out. Let's understand that where we sit right now, and I know we're going to come to your stuff, but where we sit right now, you cannot offer choices anymore beyond a certain point. You can take out labor, you can take out help desk, but you have to have a basic stack, at least starting with cybersecurity now across the board, or else you're going to be held responsible. Now, it's one thing if you're putting that in front of the client through the process that we talk about, and the client says, nope, I understand the risk, and they take all the risk on. Okay, that's one thing. But please understand, if you don't inform them, educate them, force them to a sign-off point, you're going to be left holding the bag.
Right.
So continue.
And you just kind of double down into that, right? I want you to put yourself in the viewpoint of a client, right? Now, we've all had clients tell us how to do our jobs, right? Dictating the path of support. I want this, I don't want that. I want to go through your service offer like I'm walking through the buffet at Luby's, right? I want this, I don't want that, right? They want to make choices. But when they're making those choices, are they really informed? How many times have you had somebody tell you, I don't want MFA because it slows me down, right? People make choices that don't serve them well every day of the week. The difference now is their insurance won't save them. Absolutely will not save them. The FBI doesn't care, right? If you don't lose at least $1 million, nobody at the FBI is going to even talk to you about your problem, right? And so what happens is when you offer good, better, best, it's sort of like what I've got on the graphic here on the slide. Hey, you'll like this. It tastes great. It's less filling. But wait, here's one that's my best value. No. Somebody says this is your best choice, right? They get all these conflicting messages and they don't know how to properly evaluate what the choice means. And when you take the time to explain to them what the choice really means, you do it well, they're going to want it all. They're not going to want a subset. Does anybody buy a car today without air conditioning? No. Does anybody buy a car today without a moonroof? No, we've all got like those moonroofs. When was the last time you opened your moonroof, right? We've all got things in there that just come with the package because that's how things are done. And our industry is moving away from good, better, best. It's moving away to single offer because the situation is too complex for the business owner to evaluate on their own, and they're going to get confused. But maybe you don't believe me just yet. Maybe you're sitting back there going, hey, Cindy, wait, no. I use my good, better, best differently because I land in the account and then I expand, right? How many times have we heard land and expand? That's not what people do. What people do is they sell a service and then they stay with that service because it's good enough. The number of MSPs that actually go back and truly land and expand the offer is very small.
That's because they actually have no process for that either, right? You think about what your internal, how many QBRs are you doing on a regular religious basis, and how many of them are more, even the ones that are doing it, how many are more than just a ticket review or
exactly.
report review, right?
So you got So basically, you made a decision somewhere in how you offer your service that good, better, best was great because getting a client at some price was better than not getting the client. And the reason this no longer works is because you have to answer this question: does your stack protect the business? And if you do good, better, best, what part of this stack are you leaving out? Right? And what happens when you leave the back door open but you lock the front door? Everybody comes in through the back door, right? You've got to have a consistent approach to what you're offering the client. And when you do good, better, best, and you go out and talk about security and you do good, better, best, you break the logical argument of why they need security. Chris, you know how that works. If you don't have the logic hold up to what you're offering, your client's going to drive an objection truck right through your sales process.
Right down your throat. And honestly, most MSPs are such people pleasers and are so used to letting the client dictate everything that it just gets everything gets lost. And then this is why you have to have a sales process, guys. If you don't have a sales process, you're going to be floundering, especially if you don't have a team that's very well practiced in this.
And what happens is you make decisions before you go on your first time appointment, before you go on the discovery call, before you do the CSRA. You need to make a decision about what your service offer truly is. Because sadly, there are clients that are not going to be a fit for you. Better to learn that in the first time appointment. Better to learn that in the discovery call than to get to the closing table and take a deal that does not serve you well. You don't actually have to land every deal you go on. But now you're saying to me, wait a minute, Cindy, I don't get to go out enough. I don't get enough at bats. I don't get enough opportunities. That's a different problem. You don't sacrifice your service quality or your stack and what it is you can do because you have a marketing problem. Does that make sense? If you have a marketing problem, let's go face that problem. Let's fix that. But let's have a service offer that actually meets the market where it's at today and takes into account the fact that things have truly changed. Cyber attacks are way up, and the sophistication of the attacks is now at a level where if you don't have a comprehensive service offer, the business is going to be greatly at risk.
And that brings up such a good point in that most MSP's service offering is so far behind. Now I want to be clear about something for everybody that's watching this. That doesn't mean we're sitting here bashing your business.
No.
This industry has gotten smashed in the last couple months. And what's happened, I'd say the last 24 months, we'll say it's gotten smashed, right? And if we look back at 2 years ago, there was a very distinct separation between MSP and managed security provider. Very distinct separation. The problem you have now, and just like Cindy just did, that has come all inclusive. Now I'll understand a managed security provider still doing security because they're selling downhill. But if you think about what the managed service provider, break fix person working on a firewall, like had a guy actually in our big Facebook group chat last night was talking about, hey, I have a nonprofit that just wants Office 365. And there was a bunch of discussion on, okay, if they want Office 365, they better sign off on all liability because you're only doing a project. And in your head, it's only a project. But what happens if there's a fail point? They're going to come back after you. So the bottom line is what's changed in the last 6, 12, 24 months is your project work now includes you have to handle all the stuff that's on this screen. Also, at the very least, you have to state, this is not my responsibility, and you have to force sign off on it. So you got to control the process, and you should be doing that through your sales process, not through your engineers.
Now, you might still be saying to me, but wait a minute, Cindy, what about upgrades? I like this idea of being able to upgrade the client, right? So here's the problem with upgrades. Upgrades are a great concept. But if you go back and you stack up your customers, do this example, right? Get yourself a spreadsheet. Column 1, name of all the customers. Column 2, what service software are they on? And column 3, what month did they upgrade? To, when did they come in? When did they upgrade? Do that exercise for yourself. And I think what you're going to find is you're going to find that you're surprised at whether or not you were really able to upgrade people and the discipline around it. Better to go take the high ground right off the bat and ask the question, does your stack really protect the business? Does it cover all the pieces that it needs to cover? And in doing so, you've got to look at the threat landscape today. So just a quick thing, Chris, you probably are looking at the chat. I don't know if we're getting any feedback in the chat, but I want to ask a question to everyone. And maybe you could help out by looking at that for a second, because I see part of it. Let me just see if I can move you over here.
Yeah, I got you.
And get myself over here on comments. But here's what I want to know from everybody. When you look at the threat landscape, what do you think the number one threat is right now? How are people getting compromised right now? How are they getting compromised right now? How are people getting compromised right now? Because we know that ransomware has tailed off, right? The number one way people are getting compromised right now is by criminals getting inside the business, studying the business, and then deciding how they're going to attack the flow of money in the business. And that is completely different than what has gone on before. And that means that you have to look at the business, you have to look at what's involved, and you also have to look at their cybersecurity standards and whether or not they're meeting the standards that are required for their business that they're in. And so, as a service provider, the question I have for you right now is, can you really pick and choose what you defend against? Can you do that? Can you say, hey, it's okay if you don't have multi-factor authentication, that's not a problem? Can you say, hey, it's okay if you don't have a password manager? Not a problem. It's okay if you store passwords in Chrome. Not a problem. Can you do those things? I don't think so.
No, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can do any of that. And the big question, if you're sitting there saying, oh, I wonder if I can or not, I mean, you can do anything you want, but what happens if $100,000 is gone, $200,000 is gone? We had a threat, Cindy. I think you saw this one come in because it was on a post you made in our clients group. We saw one with $8 million gone because they came in and they investigated and watched. And what happens if you get, like, how are you going to prepare for that if you left a door wide open?
And I'll just throw something out for everybody on the call today, Chris. If you've got construction clients, you need to lock those people down, because construction is getting hit so hard right now. They're just getting crucified and losing money left and right through different types of criminal attacks.
Yep.
So when we think about how we've done things in the past, 100 years ago, people used to talk about this triangle, Chris, and it was called people, process, technology, right? Little triangle.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many.
It was a baby little triangle, not even little. It was there. Was not much there.
I'm telling you how many presentations I did with people, process, technology.
Yep.
So here's the thing. Many times we have over-focused on the technology part of it. And so when we defined our offer, we're totally focused in on, hey, what's my tool stack? Hey, what's my tool stack? Hey, what tools are you using, right? People, process, technology. You got to be asking yourself, am I having executive meetings with the client? Do I have the executive's role defined so that I constantly have a touch point with them, so that I know that they're on board with what they have to do from a people and process perspective to augment what I'm bringing with the technology stack? Do we have security policies in place so that we can train and we can test and we can prove that we're getting the appropriate behavior from the people that are involved in the company? And do the people even know what the rules are, right? So one of my favorite rules, and this is something that blew up completely, but we used to teach people way back in the day that you don't let people, hitchhike into a building with your key card, right? If you worked somewhere where you had a key card, no, everybody had to swipe in, swipe out, right? But there were always people hitchhiking in. But then the great thing happened with COVID. Everybody's worked from home.
Yeah.
Well, who's on that computer when you're not? What are they doing, right? What are the security processes? What are the security policies around equipment in the home that's being used for business? What are the rules we have for that equipment, right? And you know that that has turned everything on its head, big time, huge. So, people, process, technology, you got to be looking at all pieces of it. So, when we talk about what your service offer is your service offer set it and forget it? That's a big question for me. Or does your service offer actually have some touch points where you're reaching out and you're meeting at an executive level, executive to executive, to develop that shared bond of competence that Chris and I talk about the first Monday of every month, building that shared bond of competence between executive to executive so that you have a security mindset and a security posture for the company. That's the big question for me. So I got to admit, Chris, sometimes I get frustrated with folks in our program because when they come in and they want to talk about their service offer, they put these blinders on that are just about the tech, right?
Well, it's about, so if you look at Cindy's, and you're spot on, if you look at Cindy's little slide here, it's about the tool stack. And that's it. That's all they care about. There's so many MSPs that they just sit there and their world revolves around tools and stack and all this other stuff. That's only one part of that equation. Look at how important it is to do the rest, with it having the three of those are directly related to security and sponsorship internally. This is how you get buy-in, and this is how you make sure that you have a real plan that finalizes. The incidents are happening. There's nobody that can stop it. So you better have all of these things and how you get them to do the stuff. Because yes, the tool stack's important, but you know what's really, really critical is getting them to have buy-in. How many times have you done even a basic network assessment where they're like, oh no, I can't have you do this because the other MSP will know? You got to have somebody that has real buy-in, that's on your team, that fully, not your team, but on your side, that fully sponsors all of this, executive meetings, executive sponsorship, moving into all of the rest of the pieces down the pike.
Now, the other thing that's different when you have this kind of approach, okay, it's very difficult to be replaced because it's relationship centric and it's competency oriented, right? When you're truly competent in all these areas, what happens is it's really hard to replace you. So I've got a question, Chris, for everybody on the call. I want to know which one of these areas is most difficult to define. Because if you've just had your blinders on and you're thinking just tools, 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 and I start talking to you about building rapport with an executive and having executive sponsor meetings and having security policies and having security processes, your head might be exploding. I don't know. Is it? Let me know if your head is exploding. Which of these areas is most difficult for you to define? Now, one of the things when you go to define your offer in the cybersecurity world, right, and you focus first on defining your offer, you can get a really solid list of what tools and functional capabilities you need to provide. But when we start looking at the type of company you serve, this is where things start to change. And how they start to change is in terms of compliance requirements. So last week was a big week for our industry, Chris. June 9th, when the FTC safeguards became real and they got teeth in them, right? This is not like HIPAA. No, this is real because the SEC is involved and they're going to go after people, and they are going after people. So when compliance requirements come in there, you can't set it and forget it on compliance. You've got to have processes. You've got to have people talking to people. You got to know what you're doing. Are those things called out in your service offer? That's my question. Are those things called out in your service offer? Because that is a highly lucrative market. And when you sit down and define that stuff and you have one service offer, this is it. It helps you with your compliance regulations. You can concentrate on developing excellence in that area because you're not having to ask the question, which pieces of this does the client have? Because they're getting the full offer, right? When you get that full offer, it simplifies what your team has to do because every client gets treated the exact same way down the line. Another place where this becomes very, very helpful for you is when we go into co-managed situations. A lot of folks have been talking to us, Chris, recently about, hey, I'm doing this co-managed deal, right? And you know what they're doing? And I want to get your take on this, Chris. Here's what they're doing. They're saying, you know what? I'm going to do co-managed. I'm going to provide the tool and oversee the tool, but that's it. And you know what that looks like to me? That looks to me like you're right on the edge of just being a value added reseller with not a lot of value, but
Well, you're
more
also
like
very commoditized and transaction focused, and it's only about the price at that point because you're providing no value. My view of co-managed, and such a good point too, by the way. My view of co-managed is providing a full solution and then kind of ordering what's downstream for them. So, for example, if you go into a 100-person HVAC company or something else, something like that. Let's say you go into a 100-person company and they already have internal IT. You dictate through a cybersecurity risk assessment, starting there, what they need. And then they said, okay, well, we already have all this team. Okay, we're going to handle this. And it's going to be a complete solution around this. Plus also all of your stuff that your internal team is managing, the tools, we have to manage that also because it all starts with security. So you manage that and then you dictate down to the client what the team manages. Tickets, first point of contact. We didn't even talk about this, but that's my viewpoint on it, just for the record.
So here's the thing. You notice I got a big orange box around everything on this particular slide because when you have a co-managed situation, you're going to want to define your service offer for each one of these areas for the scope, for the executive role, for the security policies, for the security procedures, and for the incident response. That's all going to fall into your security co-managed role. And that's much more than just the tools, right? Again, it's looking beyond the tool and it's looking at workflow. And that's something else we rarely talk about, but we've got to look at workflow, how people do their work, and how your security posture changes that equation. And you got to have that bat phone or that hot desk phone. When somebody clicks on something and knew they shouldn't have, they've got to know, they've got to be trained to pick up and call and report that immediately so that it can really, really help you. And so, there's a really good comment here, Chris, about, you've also got to have people researching what kind of technologies, what kinds of things come next, right? Looking forward into all of this stuff. And that's a really super good point. So,
and it should be, that's from Thomas. I'm watching on Facebook here as well. That's from Thomas McClendon. And they should actually be the ones that are helping to move the business forward, thinking around things around their line of business software and making things more efficient internally. Let your company handle this. This is the value of having a security first approach, for the record, because I don't care how great that internal team is. They can't do security. They can't do they don't have the tools you have. They don't have access to the same systems and services that you have as an MSP. Sell downhill. Start with cybersecurity. It's a way smarter play and encompass all these things, and you run the show versus letting them dictate everything.
Right. And the other thing that you've got to realize is that when you do this and you standardize the stack, what it does is it frees your mind. It frees your mind so that you can then focus on, okay, who am I going to partner with for policies and procedures, right? Because there are partners out there. There are some excellent partners out there, Chris, that people can partner with to augment their capability in policies and procedures. But the thing that can never be replaced is your relationship with the executive team. And so when you look at standardizing your stack and including that executive team interaction from the beginning, what happens is you build that much tighter relationship. And what this is going to mean is there's going to be some clients that you kick to the door or some prospects you kick to the door because when you interview the executives, you know that they don't get it.
Yeah.
Better to do that than to get into a risk bucket with somebody who doesn't get it, right? Because there's going to be a bad day, right? We all know there's going to be a bad day. People are going to get hacked. You can't keep it from happening. And when it happens, who do you want in the foxhole with you when when everything's whizzing across your head, right? You want people that have shared values that you can really work with, that help work the problem and drive towards solution, communicate clearly, and value everybody on their team and their expertise. That's what we're looking for, right? And that takes us to another really good question, Chris. And that's this: does the size of the business change your offer? Okay. So there's an idea that we haven't talked about in these last 4 weeks. Or maybe we hit it one week just very briefly, but it has to do with your ideal client. Do you have one? Have you given yourself permission to only work with your ideal clients? That's really the big question here. Because when
Can
you're
I answer
chasing,
this
yeah,
really
go
quick
ahead.
or have a
Yeah, go
comment on
ahead.
that really quick? I
Yeah,
want you guys that are watching this to think about how you in the past have managed marketing, managed lead gen, managed referrals. For the most part, and I'm not going to say this is a giant blanket statement, but for the most part, it's always been, we'll take anyone we can get. And I think Cindy has something that she calls the get out of bed number. And I think this is a really important mindset to have in your arsenal. I'm not saying say no to anybody below certain things, but you better have qualifying factors. And I want you to think about this. In the dating world, sales is dating. Okay. It's the same shit. Dating is sales. Sales is dating. It's the same stuff. In the dating world, would you take every single prospect that came your way? There's a couple guys out there I know you would, so I'm not going to say. But I want you to think about that and be serious. Are those people that you would seriously date or seriously marry? The answer is no. Realistically, if we're being real, the answer is no. So you should be looking at it the same exact way. You better have a get out of bed number in sales. And the problem is we never put enough effort into marketing because we don't like it. We never put enough effort into lead gen because we don't like it. We don't ever put effort into those things out of the box. So then we come around to it and we get a referral and we take everybody we can get.
right.
And I'm never going to say that referrals are bad, but you can't scale at your pace with only referrals. I'm sorry, but you cannot do that. I love referrals as much as anybody else, right? We all do. But I surely can't control a faucet of a pipeline faucet like I can with strategies. And then also setting, here's our minimum. Boom. Go ahead.
Right. So the reason I asked the question about whether or not the size of the business changes your offer is because pretty much on a weekly basis, I have people saying to me, well, Cindy, it's a 2-person business or it's a 5-person business. Do I really need to give them the full stack? And here's the answer to that. Yes. Here's the why. Do they have money? You know, the number of employees is sort of related to how much money the business generates, but not always, right? And also, when you have a small business, you're going to set habits. So a small business is going to get bigger. And the compromises that you make when the business is 5 people, how are you going to go back and get them to sign up when they're 10 or 15?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's going to be really tough. You know, there used to be this old thing, Chris. I used to work in this place where I had access to some computers, and I actually had full root admin access, right? And you know how crazy that is with how non-technical I am. But it's
I didn't even
really
say
hard.
that. You said that, not me.
Really, really hard to tighten up after you've been wide open, right? So think about it this way. If you say, oh, they're too small, they don't need this, they don't need that. What you've just done is you've devalued their security. You've devalued their business and you've devalued their future. And then somewhere along the line, you're going to come back and say, now you're a real business. Now you need all the real protections. No, I've been a real business all along, right? Sometimes people will say, too much process will kill a small business. We've got to be nimble. Nimble in some things. But when it comes to your technology infrastructure, where do you think money's more important? Under 5 million or over 5 million?
It's definitely more important under.
That's exactly right. Can a company under 5 million withstand a $100,000 loss better or worse than a company with 100 million, right? So you've got to get the good practices in there from the beginning. Don't sacrifice the future of your client and your relationship by making a shortcut in the very beginning because the size of the business changes your offer. Because you're afraid to go in there and tell them, you just can't run this on the back of an envelope. You can't run this on your home PC. You're going to generate too much money. You can't run this on your home PC, right? The other thing about the size of the business, have you ever noticed sometimes that when a business is too small, you don't want to do all the paperwork because they're so small, they're not worth your effort?
Yeah. Yeah.
You ever feel that way about your clients? They're so small, I don't need to build an executive relationship. They're so small, I don't need to fill in the blank, whatever it is. That happens a lot because where does your effort as a business owner go? It tends to go toward the bigger accounts, right? It tends to go to the bigger accounts. But you know what? You didn't get all those big accounts on day one, did you? You started out with small accounts. And then as you got more comfortable, you got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we see that when we talk to people inside our program, they'll say, oh, I raised my get out of bed number. And what a get out of bed number is, it's your minimum deal size, right? So our minimum deal size is $1,500 a month. You have one employee, that's going to be $1,500 a month. You have two employees, it's going to be $1,500 a month. You have three employees, it's going to be $1,500 a month, right? Because that's our minimum deal size. You have 5 employees, it's $1,500 a month. Well, wait a minute, I don't have 5 employees yet, right? You will. And if you want to do business with us, this is our minimum fee. What does that minimum fee do? It gives you the income you need to make sure that you have those executive meetings, that you treat the account with the same respect you treat your bigger ones, because you're making your appropriate margin and you've got enough money involved that it's got your focus, right? So here's the thing you might want to do. Do an exercise, right? If you've got a good, better, best plan right now, today, right? Good, better, best plan. Here's a homework problem. List all your customers, define what plan they're on, and then sort it and figure out what percentage of your revenue comes from good, what percentage comes from better, and what percentage comes from best. And I think when you do that, you're going to find some very interesting things about your business. And it's going to help clear the way for you to decide what you want to do with the business, what you want to do and how you want to evolve it and how you want to grow. Because it matters, right? Let me ask you another question about the size of the business. Does the size of the business change your incident response plan? Chris, what do you think about that one? Do you think the size of the business impacts the incident response plan?
2 questions there from my standpoint. The size of the business does not impact having one.
Right.
Yeah, like we're not a huge company. I have an incident response plan across the board, and it's actually dictated by my MSP. Not one that I own, but the MSP that we partner with, right?
Right.
I think the complexity of the incident response plan varies as you go up, but I think all the way down to a one-person shop. And here's kind of my clarity on that. Can you have an incident? You should have an incident response plan. I don't care if you're one. Now, here's the trick in that. The small person shops, the one-person shops, I'm too small for this. I don't need this. I don't have anything hackers want, blah, blah, blah. They need to understand across the board, times have changed. We have to do things differently. The hackers are after your money. So when you sit here and tell me that you don't have anything that they'd want, you're blatantly wrong. This all comes, and if we go all the way back to Cindy's process, to the start of it, and the 7-figure MSP sales process, it all starts with educating the client through a first-time appointment, starting with cybersecurity, moving to the CSRA, and making sure that they know so much. We call this in our program the risk light bulb. So we make sure the risk light bulb is turned on, and we make sure it's so damn bright that when they have the cheapy guy coming in there to try and undersell them or price focus sell them, the end user is like, well, does it include cybersecurity? Because I need that. I was educated. I was taught that I need a better way. That's the difference. That's my answer to that. And that's the difference on that.
So one of the things that people always ask us is they say, give me the list of the tools I should have to be successful. And this is actually one of my most favorite questions. I want the list of tools, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you know what's really funny about that? The list of tools isn't the magic bullet, because the tools change all the time. Okay. And even the tools get hacked sometimes. So if you're going to like tie your wagon to a tool, boy, that's kind of a risky thing. Wouldn't you rather have a list of the functional requirements that you must fulfill in order to help manage your clients' risks? So, question for you. When you talk to your clients, do you talk tools or do you talk requirements? That's a big one, right?
And if you're talking tools, you're going to die on the tool hill, is what I will tell you. Because tools change, tools evolve, tools grow, tools minimize, tools get bought out. There's all kinds of things that are there. So, yeah.
So here's the big thing. You take a tool, you wrap it with workflow, you wrap it with automation, and you wrap it with trained people. And from time to time, you'll rip a tool out and you'll put another tool in. Making that decision is something you do as a security professional, as an IT professional. When you go out and talk to your clients, talk to the executives that you partner with, you tell them that you do R&D, that once a year you evaluate what's in your tool stack and you make a plan for what pieces you're going to replace because they're obsolete, they're weak, the threats have changed, or they've had internal issues that require that they be replaced. You're responsible for managing that whole problem, right? So here's the thing. Executives like to outsource that whole department, that whole problem. They want to outsource that to you. That's why we don't talk about tools by tool name. That's why we talk about functional requirements, because functional requirements do grow and evolve. And what's going on in our industry today is that tools add functional capabilities. So does anybody have the problem today where you're looking at your tool stack and you're like, dude, I've got too many tools in here. I've got too much overlap. Anybody having that problem? I know you are. So that's why we always want to focus on the functional capabilities, not the tool names. We don't want anybody to get locked in on the tool names. They'll ask you, what tools are you bringing? And when they do, you say, that's a great question. Why do you ask? Anytime anybody asks you for what tools you're providing by name, tell them that's a great question and ask them, why do you ask? Why do they?
That's such a powerful phrase, by the way. Why do you ask? Huge valuable question, because it pivots it back to them. Like, explain that, Cindy, because I love it so much.
So there's two things. So when somebody asks you a question that's really getting inside your business, or they ask you any kind of question, you just say, That's a great question. Why do you ask? And here's the reason. What's the motivation for the question? What's underneath the question? What do they really want to know? What's important to them? Why do they want to know? Right? Why do they want to know? And here's why you need to ask that, right? That's a great question. Why do you ask? When somebody asks you a question, there's probably 1,000 different ways you can answer it. 990 of them are technical. What if the reason they ask you the question is non-technical? You're just getting ready to launch off and give them some big technical explanation, and their eyes are going to glaze over. They're not going to want to listen, right? But if you say, that's a great question, why do you ask? Then you find out what they really want to know, right? And then there's another thing, Chris, that's another great way to get a deeper understanding of what people want to understand. And that's to say, tell me more. That's a great question. Why'd you ask? Well, here's my reason. Well, tell me
Tell me
more
more
about
about that.
it.
Exactly.
Tell
Yeah.
me more, right? So what happens when we say, that's a great question? Why do you ask? Tell me more. Man, I am really dialed into you, right? I really want to know more
Well,
about
and not
why
only
you're
that, please understand, guys, you give them enough questions and you shut up and listen, they're going to tell you everything you need to know to close the deal. Half the time, 7/8 of the time, you are talking too much and dumping on them how great of an IT guy you are, which effectively doesn't matter.
I'm
You're
going to snort.
dumping on them all this. You need to stop and be a really solid listener. And I'm going to tell you right now, the only place this comes from is having a process and practicing.
That's exactly right. Now, the truth of it is, everybody's tool list is different. Okay. Everybody's tool list is different. Everybody, almost, I would say, at least half the MSPs I talk to have what we all call, we have a term for it, Chris, shiny object syndrome, right? Shiny object syndrome. Oh, I got a call from a sales rep who's got a great new tool. I need to go evaluate it. The great thing about going to a single stack is you can wrap a process around upgrading your stack, and you can stop chasing shiny objects. Okay. If you can stop chasing shiny objects, you get more efficient with your time. You get more time to go on sales calls. You get more time to go to executive meetings with meaningful customers. A single stack, what that's going to do is that's going to simplify the number of decisions you need to make in a year. And it's going to revolutionize how you do things. And you're going to stick to your stack. You're not going to be asking the question, should I be adding something else? You're going to make a decision. You're going to stick to a list of functional requirements that you fulfill. You're going to look at it as more than just a tool. You're going to wrap that automation, you're going to wrap that workflow and those trained people around it, and you're going to stick to it, because when you do that, you're making it an investment in your delivery capability. And once you stabilize that investment, what do we try to get on our investments? A return on our investments. So what I always recommend to folks is that you have a 12-month window, okay, for your tools, right? Run it like it's a software shop, right? I used to run a software shop. So what you do is you say, okay, every year on January 1st, we're going to release our new release of the cyber service. So we got cyber service 2023. It's these tools and these workflows and these automations. We're going to run that for 12 months. In August, we're going to open up an evaluation period, and we're going to look at our functional requirements. What are our needs? We're going to look at what's changed in the industry. That's going to be 30 days. We're going to make a recommendation inside of our MSP. What functional requirements are we not meeting? What new functional requirements are out there that we need to meet? What functional requirements are we meeting that are obsolete that we can get rid of? You end that exercise at the end of August. The month of September, you entertain and you test new tools. October, November, December, you implement workflow, automation, what all that kind of stuff. And January 1st, you roll your new service set and you lock it down January all the way through till the next December 31st. You see how that would work?
Yeah.
What's that going to do for you when you do that across the board? You're going to have a single stack that is scalable and efficient. Because every time we change a tool, we have unplanned work. What does unplanned work do? It eats net margin. Unplanned work eats dollars, right? So this is why we want to focus on a single stack. When you have a single stack, you have top 10% net margin performance. Who wants that? When you sell at the appropriate price, when you sell the same way every time, when you onboard the same way every time, and you have one stack, I just want you to sit for a minute and I want you to feel all the opportunities for marginal gains just lifting you up, right? All these places where things can get streamlined and you can run a much more efficient shop. And at that point, things really start to change for you. And I'm really fond of saying, Chris, I'm really fond of saying when you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. And the problem is when we do what we've always done, we get a certain amount of success.
Yeah.
Feel
especially in this industry, you can actually coast along pretty well. And if you got some buddies and you got some referrals in, you're doing okay. But the challenge is you don't know what you don't know, and you almost get it's success by mirage. Really, like to me, it's growth by accident is kind of what it is, right? And I want to implore you guys, if you do things the right way, you have an opportunity right now that this industry has never seen ever in the history of this industry, all the way back to the day the first Tandy was built, right? We got so much opportunity right now, and it's because compliance is here, cybersecurity is here, insurance is here. We have an opportunity to dictate how much we charge, but it all starts with how you talk to the prospect and your existing client. And if you don't have a process for that, which starts with doesn't have to start with our stuff, but you better have a process, and you better be very disciplined, and you better be very diligent. And if you're tech first versus sales first, you're going to lose a lot of money, and you're probably going to get bent over with some type of a cybersecurity compliance. And if you look at your tool stack might be great, but look at 2, 3, 4, and 5 on this screen, you're going to get left behind there. Because I'll tell you what, we see this every day right now, Cindy. We see our members, which are using this stuff, walking in the door to even people that are charging pretty well, $150, $200 a seat. And we're outselling them because we're offering all of this. And it's such a massive differentiation point that we're going in, doubling the price and closing deals, ripping them away from the cheap guy.
Right. And the real thing here, and this is what today has all been about. So I hope if I've gotten one point across to you, it's this. You got to have certain design points for your service offer. I believe the slide you're looking at right now can help you with that. When you have the design points for your service offer and you know what you will not sacrifice, for example, I will not sacrifice my executive meetings. Those are not optional. I will not sacrifice security policies or security processes. And I certainly will not sacrifice having an incident response plan. When I won't sacrifice those things, it allows me to screen people out who are not going to be the appropriate client. And when you screen those people out early in the process, at the discovery call, for example, what ends up happening is your batting average goes up as you get closer to the CSRA and the proposal. And those are higher quality candidates than at the first time appointment in the discovery call, because you know that you're just not going in there and just selling a little simple tool suite. That's the deal.
Yeah.
And the big question for today, for you to take away, this is your take home question. This is the kind of thing I want you to put in your meditation tonight when you're thinking or whatever it is you're doing. What role would one solution play in your net profit and success? What role would one solution play? You were to move to one solution, everybody gets the same thing because this is what's appropriate in 2023 to keep your business as safe as possible. This is what allows me to scale my business appropriately and offer white glove service to all my clients. This is what allows me to invest in my people and to train them to the highest level. This is what allows me to increase my automations so my reactive hours per endpoint goes way down.
Mm-hmm.
This is what allows me to move my technicians between clients. They're no longer affixed to a client because things are weird and wonky over there. So I need one person to go over there. No, I now have a uniform delivery environment. And what ends up happening is you end up applying the same methodologies that enterprise level IT shops have, right? Only your enterprise level IT shop is spread out over 20 companies. But because you have the same stuff going on in all of them, you start to get true economy of scale.
And I know it's going to take you. I know it's going to take you a little bit of time to roll this out. If you're sitting there thinking that, Mr. MSP owner, oh, I got 25 different firewalls across 25 different clients. I got all this. Okay, I understand. It's a project. It's going to take some time, but 1% better every day, we make some pretty big headway. Everybody new that we sell goes on that stack, and then we figure it out. And then as we go back, and one of our first things that we do as we bring you as a member into our coaching program is we say, let's go back to our existing clients and focus on them. That's our biggest opportunity to upsell. It's also our largest risk.
Absolutely.
It's also our largest money left on the table because we sold them the old way. They're used to the old stuff. So let's go back and talk to them. Also gives us time to practice. All those things come into play.
Exactly. So listen, for those of you that really did want the tool list, there is one. And it's coming next week. Mm-hmm. Ryan O'Hara, who's our VP of Member Services and a former MSP owner himself, he's going to come in next week and put some meat in the sandwich and let you know what tools are out there and how you can stack up your offer. And the only thing that I ask is that you think about this broader picture, because what it does is it's going to help you build that shared bond of competence with owners that really want to grow. And as we all know, is there any more favorite client than one that's growing? That's the kind of people we want to be working with, right, Chris?
That works. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Cindy, great job today. Super pumped to see Ryan next week. Actually, I will not be here next week because I'm going to be traveling. But Ryan's going to be. Cindy, if you want to be here, or Lindsay can be here with Ryan, either one of you. And actually, Cindy, if you want to be here with Ryan next week, that'd be pretty cool because you guys can transition into that. Maybe that's a good place. Sure. Maybe we'll do it that way. But I'm going to be on the road next week. Actually, I'm going to be with, you remember Jason Panka?
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, Jason's one of my good friends. I've been mentoring Jason for since 2013, I think it was, give or take. So a while, about 10 years. I'm playing in his member guest golf tournament at his country club with him.
Oh God, how fun.
So I will be traveling to Jason next week. It takes like 9 planes to get to Hayes, Kansas. So I'll be doing that.
There you go.
At this time. So, all right, Cindy, thanks so much. Great job today. It's good to see you. And we'll see you guys next week. I will not be here, but Cindy and Ryan will be. So we'll see you guys here next week. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.